Weapons is finally out in theater and I went to go watch it. Of course, this is the mystery horror film directed by Zach Cregger, the same director that brought us Barbarian, which I still haven't seen. If you haven't seen it, I believe it's on Netflix. And for those who have seen it, please let me know if this is a movie worth watching. From what I've heard, Barbarian is also a great movie, a great horror movie. Now let's jump right in. I'm definitely going to be talking about things that are going to spoil the movie, so if you have not watched it, spoiler alert. Now the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that this movie was super long. I felt like it was long. It did have a slow beginning, which ultimately scared me at first because I thought that it was going to stay in that pace. But thankfully it didn't. It was just a big setup, right, for a great movie. Now, a big reason as to why this movie was great was the humor. This movie had the best humor I've ever seen in a horror movie. I can't think of another horror movie that had this sort of humor, this great humor. And I think that's what kind of allowed the viewer to keep engaged with the story, right? For example, my favorite chapter of this movie was James's point of view, right? The drug addict. You get to see his point of view, and the entire chapter was just funny. There was a lot of scary moments in this chapter, but ultimately it was funny, and it just made the movie fun. Another thing that made this movie so great was how intriguing it was. The points of views, right? You have all these different characters, and throughout the movie, you get their points of view, which allowed us to kind of put it all together piece by piece, right? We weren't getting spoon-fed the story like many of these other horror movies, mystery horror movies. This movie here did a great job of taking its time and just giving us this story piece by piece. And we were the ones who had to put all the pieces together. It wasn't spoon-fed. Weapons didn't have as much jump scares as I expected, but the few that it did have were amazing. They got me every time. And I think when I went to watch this movie, the movie theaters was packed. The room was packed. And the jump scares did get the people. You saw popcorn flying. Weapons didn't depend on a lot of jump scares. They didn't just throw jump scares left and right. It kind of built up to the jump scares, and you were expecting a jump scare to happen at one point, and then it doesn't, and then eventually it does, right? For example, you have Archer who has the dream. He runs outside his house, comes back in, and you see his little boy on his bed. Now, if it was another horror movie, a bad horror movie, the jump scare would have happened immediately. And that's what I was expecting. But it didn't. He turns around and you see the little boy's face and he gets all emotional, right? Eventually, the jump scare does happen, but it's not until you kind of like relax. You're like, okay, this is not a jump scare. It's just a normal scene. And then you get jump scares. So I thought the jump scares in this movie were great. And of course, you can't have a horror movie without blood, right? This movie was bloody. It was a bit gory. You have the scene where the guy smashes his husband's head in with his own head. I thought that was just one of those things that you just like, can you make it stop? And of course, you have Glady's death at the very end. I thought that was a funny moment as well because they're chasing her around the neighborhood, or all these little kids, and it's just something that you didn't expect. Like if you were a normal person, like there was this guy mowing his lawn, he sees the group of children chasing Gladys around, and she's screaming like a maniac because she knows what's going to happen. If you saw that as a normal person, you'd be like, what the hell is going on? But of course, you get to the part where they rip her apart. Now, I thought that this scene was a little weird because you have kids ripping up an older lady. Of course, she's evil, right? She's a witch. But I just thought it was weird that kids were actually taking part of the gore, right? Ripping someone apart, even though, of course, it looked fake. I don't know. For me, it just felt weird. But it was bloody. It was gory. This movie was gory. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that it reminded me a lot of Longlegs. right? Which was my favorite movie of 2024. But I feel like Weapons did a better job of telling the story. I felt that because it had humor, it made it just a fun movie to watch, right? It made it more engaging. Whereas Longlegs, it didn't have humor and it was slower and it was just too, it was scary, but it was just too much of the scary. It wasn't as alive as Weapons with the humor and the different perspectives and all this stuff. At the end of Longlegs, you kind of get spoon fed, what was the cause of all the chaos, right? Whereas in this one, they don't spoon feed you. They make you put the pieces together yourself. And that's something that I did like about Weapons. So I will say that Weapons so far is my favorite horror movie of 2025. Let's see what happens because we have The Conjuring coming out coming out next month. I'm excited for that. But so far, Weapons is my favorite movie. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But thank you guys so much for watching. And I'll see you guys next time.